The cracked earth of Racetrack Playa holds its breath. A single stone, heavy as a car, leaves a trail 200 meters long. No footprints, no tire tracks, no sign of force. Only a path etched deep into the dry lake bed. Imagine the weight, hundreds of kilograms, dragged across the desert floor like a silent ghost. For 70 years, no one saw it happen. Decades of speculation, wind, earthquakes, underground currents. Researchers scoured the playa, leaving empty trails behind. They found the stones, cold and still, their tracks stretching toward the distant mountains. No one ever caught them moving. The mystery grew heavier than the stones themselves. In 2014, Richard Norris and his team placed cameras at the playa. They waited. They waited for the rare moment when the lake bed flooded. Then, a thin layer of water froze overnight into sheets of ice. The wind, light but persistent, began to move the ice. The cameras captured it. The ice sheets, brittle and clear, shifted. They nudged the stones, pushing them forward just a few centimeters at a time. A slow, silent shoving match. The ice carried the stones along, leaving the long, straight tracks we see today. Imagine grains of sand moving a city block over months. The stones didn't glide, they were carried. The mechanism was simple. It required just the right conditions: rain, cold, and wind. It happened rarely, only in the dead of winter. The stones moved when no one was watching, and the tracks held the secret for decades. The wind didn't move the stones. It moved the ice that moved the stones. The desert held its breath, and the stones kept walking. Now we know the mechanism. Thick ice sheets form on the playa after rare winter rains. The sun melts the top layer just enough to let the ice float. Wind, barely a whisper, pushes this ice. The ice drags the stones forward a few centimeters each day. Sunlight on frozen mud captured the motion. The ice sheet, clear as glass, glided over the stone's base. It wasn't the wind pushing rock directly. It was the wind pushing water, pushing ice, pushing stone. The trails are the fingerprints of this slow-motion drag. Before 2014, the wind itself was blamed. A theory claimed desert gusts, strong enough to lift stones, carved the tracks. But wind speeds in Death Valley rarely exceed what could move a small pebble, not the heaviest stones here. No footage ever showed this. The wind alone couldn't explain the straightness or the length of the trails. It was a neat idea, but the physics didn't hold. Stones this heavy simply wouldn't budge in the wind without a slippery surface. Another idea involved shifting mud. A theory suggested the stones slid on a layer of wet earth, but mud would create messy, curved tracks. The racetrack's tracks are straight, often kilometers long. The playa's dry mud cracks under sun, not smooth. Mud tracks would also vanish quickly. The stones' paths remain visible for years. Mud couldn't account for the sustained, linear movement. The ice explanation fits every piece. The stones move only when the playa holds a thin water film that freezes overnight. The ice must be strong enough to float the stone, but thin enough to shift with light wind. This happens just once or twice a year, in the coldest, driest winters. The tracks build slowly, a few centimeters daily, as the ice sheet drifts. The stone's path is a record of a single winter's quiet work. The desert held its breath, and the ice walked for us. Mud tracks would curve like rain on a window pane, thick and messy, vanishing within days. The racetrack's paths cut straight for kilometers across cracked earth. They slice through sun-baked mud that splits like old pottery. No mud could hold such a clean line for decades. The stones didn't slide on soft earth. They left a record the desert kept for years. In 2014, Norris's team waited. They placed GPS trackers on stones, buried weather sensors across the playa. They waited for the rare cold snap. Then on a windless morning, a thin film of water froze overnight. Not thick ice, but a fragile sheet no wider than a human hair. Sunlight hit it, and a breeze barely strong enough to lift dust pushed the ice. The ice, still attached to the stones, drifted. The trackers recorded the stones moving a mere 2 centimeters. A single, slow push. The ice must be precise, thin enough to shift with a whisper of wind, strong enough to lift stones weighing dozens of pounds. It forms only when a shallow water film freezes just below freezing. The wind must be gentle, persistent, too strong, and the ice shatters. too weak, and nothing moves. This perfect moment happens once or twice a year. Each stone moves only during this fragile window, its path built by a few centimeters of ice drag each morning. Imagine the scale, a stone moving less than the width of a grain of sand each time. Over 18 days of these quiet nudges, the trail grows to 100 meters. The desert preserves this record not in a flash, but in a patient accumulation 100 times smaller than a single human step. The tracks remain, etched in the dry clay, long after the ice is gone. The ice explanation fits every puzzle: the straight lines, the slow accumulation, the rare conditions. No other force could create such a clean, enduring path. The mystery wasn't how the stones moved. It was how long we missed the quiet work of a frozen breath. What other secrets does this desert leave behind, unseen?